So we're back for the first game. I probably won't play as many games today just because I'm mostly interested in just like testing out this like new recording setup and just trying out this deck rather than climbing up high. Yeah, so we're up against Mage, and this could really be anything. As far as mulliganing, we're on the draw, so we're certainly going to keep these two 1-drops, which is just one of the best starts possible in Hearthstone. The question is whether we keep Imp Gang Boss to guarantee ourselves a play on turn 3, while risking that we don't have a play on turn 2. And especially, I think we mulligan it just because even if we get a turn to play, it's not necessarily a good turn to play. Like, it's not necessarily a play that like advances our board. Like, if we get an Erubian Egg, we're not going, like, on turn 2 we're not going to be super excited. And so I think I just want another draw step towards something like a Knife Juggler or like a Direwolf Alpha that will really advance our board state. And I think by the time turn 5 rolls around, there's a decent shot we'll have drawn another 2-drop anyway. Yeah, so this is pretty perfect. The Haunted Creeper is one of the better possible follow-ups to this, and on turn 3 we probably have Life Tap Voidwalker or Voidwalker and Erubian Egg, depending on what the board state looks like. Yeah, so the fact that this is happening means it's relatively less likely that our opponent is Mech, though again, you could just obviously be anything at this point. Because I don't have Implosion in my deck, it doesn't really matter where I play my creatures. But if I did have Implosion, I definitely want to play this creature on the left. Okay, so he is Mech, and this is a pretty solid start for him. Okay, so this was obviously a great draw. The Snow Trigger doesn't do a ton here, so I'm not super worried about. I'm way more worried about this Mech Warper generating him like upwards of 2 mana next turn. So I'm definitely playing Abusive Sergeant and trading the Haunted Creeper in just to get a slightly bigger board, which will give me more options, and then also just playing the second Haunted Creeper. And yeah, so this is pretty solid board state for going into my 4th turn. It's not perfect because I don't really have ways to make my creatures better, and these creatures are obviously fairly terrible. Blast Mage is not great, but it's never going to be great. So this is a great way to make my creatures better. I think it's worth doing because it lets me get this trade, and then which clears all of his. And otherwise I can't really exchange profitably for any of his creatures. And this is something he definitely has to clear away, so the freeze is fairly irrelevant on this creature. Yeah, so now his plays are pretty constrained. Mad Scientist is fairly irrelevant in this deck. Obviously, this deck has an absurd amount of just completely terrible creatures, and this is basically the best draw in my deck. It's gonna let me trade off for his whole board, and just screw up his Mirror Entity with the card that doesn't do anything in his deck. Oh, this is not Mirror Entity. I guess it's Counterspell? I guess it's great because I don't have any spells in my deck, except for the 1 Power Overwhelming. As a general word of advice on how you want to place your minions, you generally want to place your minions, like, in terms of, like, you want the stickier minions at the edges. So Loatheb here is a very reasonable draw. I don't have a great way of dealing with this. It's also possible that this card is Duplicate, which would be strange, but not impossible. if it is duplicate, I want to clear the spider tank first because it's less relevant than this card. It'll usually have the mech to trigger it. So it's kind of unfortunate that I don't have a way to clear this board that leaves him with only unfavorable exchanges. He's always going to get a favorable exchange on this Voidwalker. But this is pretty solid, and given that he's already played a Blast Mage and a Tinkertown, I think it's more worth clearing out the higher power creature than it is clearing out the mech, though it's possible that that's a mistake. And yeah, so this is almost certainly counterspell at this point, which is basically a blank card against this build of the deck. Yeah. So one thing I'm thinking about doing is playing music while I play. I don't know if that's beneficial that'd be beneficial to the viewer experience or not, because the music I listen to is generally fairly strange. But I don't know. I think it might be maybe like an interesting look into the kinds of music I listen to. Add a little personality to these videos. So you definitely want to life tap first to see what all of your options are, and currently I don't really have very many good ones. I think I want to clear it as board. 5 damage is quite a lot, and this 1/2 is not super relevant, but I think just leaving him with no board while I have like this very solid board and the ability to play Dr. Boom next turn is pretty valuable. The fact that, yeah, because I mean, last turn there's no way he would have just emergency cooled my guy if he had any reasonable plays at all. So I think I'm pretty optimistic about what's going on here. I think the most likely thing that's gonna happen is this gets fireballed, but yeah, okay. And yeah, so this is obviously great for me. I have Dr. Boom on basically an empty board. Next turn he's going to have a pretty good exchange here, but that's not at all sufficient going to be sufficient to beat a Dr. Boom. Like, yeah, because Mech has no favorable ways to interact with this card. So the high end has been pretty good, though obviously I've drawn it like exclusively when I have not had Doom Guards. And I've had sufficient mana to cast them, so that's obviously not extremely representative. Alright, so a win.